Looking for a fun and informative podcast all about training working dogs? Look no further than the LWDG Pod Dog. This weekly show is hosted by me, Jo Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group, and I chat to experienced trainers and experts in the field who will give you helpful tips and advice. Whether you're just getting started or you've been working with dogs for years, this podcast will have something for you. So pull up a chair, pour yourself a cup of coffee, and tune in to LWDG Pod Dog. Let us help you build a better bond with your best friend. Welcome to another episode of LWDG Pod Dog. Today we're going to be talking all about grouse counting. Joining me on this podcast is Lucy Hall. And we've also got with us our amazing LWDG Regional Coordinator, Sue Lister. Welcome both. Welcome, Lucy. Now, I know you're going to chat through with us everything about grouse counting. But before you start, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okie dokie. Yeah, so basically I've grown up with my dad working English pointers and setters, and he's trialled them, we've shot over them, and obviously grouse counting. I didn't really get into having my own dog until, how old was I? About 7 years ago. I got my own English setter. But I'd always been dog boy to my dad, just holding the dogs, going out and watching and everything. So it's basically been part of my life. Every holiday, we've always been up on the moors or in the partridge fields with the dogs and helping train as well. So yeah, for the last, I suppose, 7 years with my English setter, I've been off grouse counting. I've also shot over her as well and run her for a couple of shooting parties. And now I actually have a 10-month-old English setter who I'm training up as well. So so we actually will be going off. I've been grouse counting for the last four years, I'd say. I will wait until I go into that and say a bit more about it. But I will be heading off up to the moors. Can't wait in about a month's time in March. So off up to Scotland and Northern England. So which will be really exciting.
So we've got the perfect expert to talk to us on this topic. Now, before I start you on talking about the topic, Sue, have you been involved in grouse or grouse counting at all, or are you as fascinated as I am?
I'm fascinated. There are a lot of grouse on the moor near where I live. But no, apart from them like shooting out in front of me as I walk across the moor, no, I know nothing about counting them. Joining us
a little bit into our call is the amazing Emma Stevens. Emma, do you know anything about grouse counting, or has your recent move to Cumbria sort of started off this fascination?
So I was aware that it happened, and I know roughly how it works. But no, I've never done it before. I've never been on a grouse moor before. I'm very much a pheasant and partridge shoot kind of person. I would love to, since coming up to Cumbria, I would love to get more into grouse and go and pick up on grouse moors and things like that. And possibly go and watch some counting because it's fascinating. So I'm really excited to listen to what Lucy has to say about it.
So let's start at the beginning. What is grouse counting?
Okie doke. So basically, we are helping the keepers get an idea of how many birds they've got for their shooting period once the glorious 12th comes round. So we do 2 counts, one in March when we're counting the pairs, and then another count in around July time when we've got the broods. And basically, it gives, obviously, counting the pairs, it gives them an idea of how many broods they're going to possibly get. Also, because obviously they'll be in pairs, cocks and hens, you can also get a feel, because quite often there will be single cocks, and they'll get an idea of actually how many breeding pairs they've got. Obviously then when we go on to the broods, it's good to see what sizes they are, how healthy they are. And normally that's around mid-July time, so a month before the glorious 12th. And obviously over the last few seasons, I must say, most places it has been quite hit hard, and so a lot of places have stopped shooting. And they've only allowed perhaps walked up days or days over pointers and setters.
So before we go any further, just for me to understand, because this is like literally how inexperienced I am about this whole topic, whereas we put pheasants down as poults, and they are, they're not bred in the end environment really on the most. Are grouse all wild?
Yeah, all completely wild. They don't. I don't think many people try, but they don't really breed very well in captivity. So all grouse, yeah, they're just completely wild. So obviously they do get affected by weather, plays a huge impact. There's also the heather beetle. There's all a few bits and pieces up on the moors that you know the keepers have to obviously keep an eye on, which is why we get heather burning. Obviously, some places now you can't. They're not allowed to do it. But it's all management. And like everything, the moors need to be managed to keep these birds alive and also keep all the diversity there.
So the shoot season that starts in the August really depends on how well the count goes with the pairing and the broods really then. So they work backwards, whereas we work forwards. So yeah. we know what dates we're having based on the amount of birds that we put down, and you work kind of backwards a little bit. You put as many days on as you've got birds.
Exactly. And so what will happen is quite often estates will start getting grouse dates booked in even in September, October, November, once say some people have shot. But what's happened over the last few seasons is, sadly, yes, people have got booked on, but then once the counts get done, I mean, most keepers don't make a decision unless it's dire in the spring, and the pairs are really bad and it's awful. They'll make the decision then and there to say, right, no, we can't do any shooting. Otherwise, they'll wait until the brood counts are done, and then they have to make a decision from that, whether they're going to shoot, whether they're going to cancel half of them. Where I go, it's a family estate, so they don't tend to do many paid commercial days. So what they tend to do is just limit the family down to a few days. It just depends on what's been counted.
First of all, from an environmental perspective, in order for grouse shooting to take place, it absolutely requires management and care for the land, because literally without it, you aren't putting down birds. You literally have to know the whole ecosystem on those moors is working efficiently for the birds to breed.
Absolutely. So that's obviously the keepers are going out, they're culling the prey of the grouse. That needs a lot of management, but also that contribution of looking after doing the management for the grouse is also helping a load of other bird and animal species as well. I expect, like everything, to make an ecosystem work, you need a good balance and equilibrium, and that's exactly what the keeper's job is to do.
So my second question on that then is, obviously, whereas a lot of pheasant shooting can be, it can go from family-run small syndicates all the way up to large corporate estates. If you take part in grouse shooting, it really is a very small amount of days, a very expected small bags, as in you're not getting anywhere near the numbers because you didn't put them down in the beginning. It is a completely different type of shooting, isn't it?
Yeah, I obviously going back to how the numbers are. I mean, you can have driven days, and it depends on some grouse moors, like Bollyhope in the northern England. They are renowned for having amazing days, and they will shoot seriously thousands in a good year. Other estates may just not have as many, and so they might shoot a lot less. And so sometimes so what they'll do is they might do a few driven days, because, sorry, going back, the grouse shooting season is from the 12th of August to, I'm going to say 8th of December, but don't hold me on that, but it is something around that time. And so what they'll do is they'll otherwise do walked up days. So walked up days are obviously over the spaniels, labs, HPRs. And then what I do is the more, I suppose, absolute traditional way is over the pointers and satyrs. That's English pointers and satyrs. And there we used to book days for like 10 brace, because, not being funny, for me, it's all about working the dogs, watching the dogs and everything. And you don't need many more. You only have two guns up with one dog. And that's all that's running at a time. And to be fair, you walk a lot. You've got, these dogs do cover long, wide distances and everything. So you do walk a lot, and so you don't actually need. You're doing a bit of conservation in itself anyway, because you're always being asked to shoot the old cocks, which are the ones that fly up first. If you can. It's a world I've grown up in. Something I feel quite passionate about as well. Obviously, working with the satyrs and pointers, and it's a dying thing, because driven shooting has taken over, and so a lot of estates, especially in Scotland, used to have huge kennels of satyrs and pointers. I mean, 80 to 100 dogs, and they'd either use them on their own estates, or otherwise they go and rent them out to other estates and handlers to run them for shooting parties. And we just don't have that anymore. Driven shooting has taken over, and to be fair, there's only really now a window of probably 3 or 4 weeks from the glorious 12th, but about 4 weeks, where you can really actually have good days over the dogs, because the grouse then get jumpy, they get wild. The dogs just can't get close enough to them before they're starting to pin them down, so that guns can get up close enough to actually shoot them. So I have gone shooting in October time, but then you're lucky if you get 2 or 3 birds. But that's the beauty of it.
As you're explaining it to me, I'm thinking, my mind is thinking, oh wow, because again, with pheasants, you roughly got an idea what drives they're going to be on, because they're encouraged to stay near or close to those drives or in those drives. You're going out onto the moors, and those birds have got nobody really telling them where they should or shouldn't be, or where they should be eating, what they should be doing. So you are really, truly hunting.
Yes, I mean, the other thing about grouse is they do hold territories. So keepers will know their moors very well, and so quite often they will, once having counted a particular moor or a particular count for, say, a couple of years, they will know that this particular cockbird it should be in a certain area. So it's amazing. I can be walking, going out on a count, and the keeper, I always go out with the keeper, and the keeper will say, oh, that's a bit weird, we haven't seen, there should be 2 or 3 cockbirds around here. That's very strange, if you haven't seen them. So they do hold territories, and you very rarely do they go into other territories. So they very much hold it. But obviously keepers, the more and more they do their counts, and they get to know where the grouse are. It's amazing. I mean, they've got such a wide expanse of ground to cover, but they really do know it. So yeah, quite amazing.
So what does a day counting look like? So if you were going up for day counting, what would it look like? Mm-hmm. Like, when would it start? When would you hope to be finished by? What kind of ground would you cover? What would you be expecting to do on that day?
Good question. It depends on how many dogs you've got. Generally, and then I'm talking obviously about counting with pointers and satyrs. Just going back, the dogs that are used for counting, you can have pointers and satyrs, HPRs, even spaniels and labs. I think probably, I haven't done it personally with my spaniels. I think it's probably easiest for keepers to do it with dogs that point, because obviously the dogs will then hold the birds, and then the handler can walk up, the keeper can go up if they want, but then the dogs flush them methodically, so they're easier to count. Whereas obviously when you've got spaniels and labs, I do know a girl up in North Yorkshire who goes out with her spaniels and labs, and she's got a team of a bit like you, Emma, has got 8 or 10 dogs that she's working, and I know she goes out and helps with the counts. But when you've got it like that, they're all strewn across, and I mean, birds must just be going up, so you've got to really keep your eyes open. Whereas I think with obviously the pointing breeds, it's a lot easier, because obviously, as I said, they're holding the birds. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but the pointers and satyrs are probably and I say the English pointers, because they're a separate subbreed from the HPRs, is that they're probably better because they cover, and I'll probably get to told off for this, but they probably cover the ground better. They're faster. And so you can get, I think keepers probably prefer faster running dogs just because you can get more done. So starting with a typical day, so generally you would want about 4 dogs for a count, because you're running one at a time. And depending upon the weather and what it's like, obviously whether you're in the summer and it's really hot, you might even want to take another dog out with you, because you just need to be conscious of how your dogs are running. They can run, the terrain where I go is hard. I mean, it's seriously boulder-like. It's in Lancashire, on the Abbeystead estate, and it is very bouldery, lots of uphill, downhill, what have you. Other estates that I've been on in North Yorkshire, it's not flat, but it's a lot easier, so less work for the dogs. So on a typical day for me, I'll do 2 counts, and generally the counts can take an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending upon the size of them. We'll then give the dogs an hour's break, and then we do another one. So we could, again, it depends on the weather and what it's like. If it's really hot in the summer, we'll start at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then we might actually do 1 count. If it's really hot, we'll wait and do a count in the evening. So I normally take, I give the keepers 2 or 3 days where I go and I will be counting every day. Sadly, I don't have a big enough team to do any more, but also generally I tack on my counting. The counting coincides with trials and stuff, so I'm up in the area because I'm actually from the south in Oxfordshire, so I'm always trekking up north, and so I kind of time it. And if I've been doing quite a lot of trials and stuff, I don't want my dog could be absolutely knackered, and all of that. Or if I'm counting before going to trials, then I actually don't want to do too much counting. And so what I actually do is I end up borrowing friends' dogs to add on into my team, and make up the numbers.
Most people listening will know what an English setter is. They're beautiful dogs. Was it bred to be on the moors doing this exact job?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, all setter breeds and pointers, the working strain very much was. They're bird scenting dogs, and they are bred to run wide distances, and basically finding birds for you. That's what they want to do. And they will run until they are absolutely exhausted, just because they just want to find that game. And they're amazing, very clever dogs to watch. And it's interesting though, because between each subbreed, pointer, English setter, Irish red and white, and Gordon, there are different characteristics that are different in each. And it's actually really interesting because I've grown up obviously watching English setters and English pointers, and it's very interesting watching the different traits come through. I mean, I've got 2 springers as well, and it actually, someone said to me, they're actually quite similar, English setters and springers, and it is true in a way, though obviously one lot you have to keep close, the other lot you want to get running, but they both have that kind of we want to get on. There's no patience, we just want to get on. So
I find it so interesting that probably only on grouse now you find this still kind of borrowing of each other's dogs. It doesn't in pheasant and partridge shoots, like you have your team of dogs, and I couldn't think of anything worse than giving my dogs to somebody, even if they knew what they were doing with them on a pheasant day. I would think that they would ruin them, whereas actually it's quite the norm for grouse keepers to share each other's dogs. And if you're having a day counting, you'll go and help out another grouse keeper count, and then vice versa, whereas you don't seem to have that same kind of camaraderie, I guess, where you're willing to help each other in the pheasant and partridge world, as much as you do across different grouse moors. So I find that really interesting that you're prepared to share dogs and stuff.
And actually I've been very lucky because the few dogs that I have borrowed, one came from a great friend, and she ran actually really well for me, and another 3 I borrowed, they actually from a friend who sadly she was ill, so she had quite a large kennel of about 20 dogs, and those I've used 4. One was an absolute bugger, absolute brute, the brother of one of mine. And I was supposed to trial him the next day, and I said, sorry, it's not going to happen. But one of her Irish setter I just clicked with. He was just an absolute dream. And it's just, yeah, it is. It's really nice. But also, I've actually really enjoyed working dogs that obviously are trained, and I take them on. And it's amazing how quickly I've managed to just, get that partnership going, which has been, just really, really lovely.
So when you talk about obviously how the count affects the season, and now talking to you, I can understand the massive importance of the count. And plus, I'm sure many people listening to this will think, what a ethical way to do it. You're genuinely working with what's on the ground and being sympathetic to what's happening environmentally each year. But you say there's sort of been a minimisation or a decrease in the amount of sort of walked up shooting that's going on, etc. Is that then affecting the dog breeds? Are the setters, etc., are there smaller numbers being bred?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, now, obviously, I know the English setter. I mean, you get, 100, 140 English setters now bred in the UK, possibly a year. And they are on the endangered dogs list. And the majority of those are showbred. And I'm sorry, that's going into another thing, because the pointer and setter breeds now are very much, sadly, two separate breeds, work and show. You do get, obviously, some dogs that are bred half and half, which is fine. But if say I'm wanting for what I want, not being funny, I wouldn't go through show breeding, because they just don't, the confirmation isn't there. They don't, they're heavy dogs bred purely for the show ring. There's a lot of coat and all the rest of it. What I want in my dogs is ones that are going to be fast, they're pacey, they're stylish, they've got good nose, they're intelligent, and all the rest of it. And so very much now, they are two separate breeds, sadly, in many ways. And because they're not like with spaniels and labs, you can go and train them anywhere. All you need is a scrub bit of ground, say for some spaniels and labs, if absolute minimum. With a setter and a pointer, you need ground, not just for exercising, but for training. And also training, I mean, I've spent so much time going around asking farmers and landowners, do you mind if I can, use your ground? And it's very difficult because obviously, and also, or otherwise keepers, it's really difficult because quite often they go, no, because we're going to be using this for shooting, we're going to be doing this. And then I say, well, actually, I'm really interested in your ground because I've been seeing a lot of hares on it. I want to train my dog on some hares. No, sorry. If you get seen running there, I'll get the coursers on because they think they can hit it. So it's very difficult. And I think that's also the number of people wanting these dogs it's a lot lower, and it's reduced. Also, I think the fact that the use of these dogs through the year, there isn't actually a long period of time. We don't have the 6 months of the shooting season for the like the labs and spaniels. You can use them for woodcock and all the rest of it, and people do actually use them on general shoots, but that's not their natural environment. So we tend to, it is when you're using them for the grouse or through the grouse shooting season. We do use them occasionally on the partridge. But most now partridge shoots obviously are commercial. They don't want the dogs on them, and also once the partridge have been shot a bit, they of course get jumpy as well, and you can't get dogs close to the birds. So yeah.
When you compare figures like hundreds of setters being registered, compare that then to the Kennel Club, I think it was 2020, 83,000 cocker pups. That is. You can see there is a massive problem, isn't it? That's like they are worlds apart in numbers. Where, you talk about them sort of being endangered. If people are listening to this and are interested in potentially, is this something that can do? If you like pheasant shooting, you can sort of find somebody who goes pheasant shooting or beat her or pick her up or, and you can sort of get in yourself. Like you said, you only need a small amount of land to train. How does somebody even get involved in being part of a grouse shoot?
I think probably the best thing to do is, I mean, it does help obviously if you live up near a grouse moor. But if you are, I would go in and see if you can go and beat on a grouse moor, on the grouse shoots, and find out that way. But if you're wanting to, say, go along the possibly interested in the setter and pointer world, and working those kind of dogs, then I would probably say come along. I think I would say come along to the trials, because the trials are we're very close community. There's not many of us obviously who do it, and we have trials in Suffolk, Norfolk for the partridge, and then Northern England and Scotland for the grouse, and it's actually the closest way of seeing the dogs working in the natural environment, and there's a lot of people there who are very knowledgeable and exceedingly welcoming, and there's actually quite a few people, and I've met quite a few people through the LWDG actually who have got young setters and pointers, who I've helped out and put them in touch with people to take their dogs further. And there's a couple of training days, not as many as sadly with for the labs and spaniels, but there are out there. Frustratingly, we don't have any I was going to say commercial trainers, but there's plenty of gun dog trainers, but because of these breeds, they're just in the minority, and they do need specialist training. It's completely different training to all of your other breeds, like and the HPRs and labs and spaniels. You do need people that actually know and understand them, because they do take a long time to mature. It's amazing, we call them pups, and I mean dogs are pups until they're about 2, but in our case it definitely is like that. But once you have them going, I mean, I could just watch them all day, and follow them all day. It's
I think it was yourself who shared with me some videos, didn't you, of them working. I was just like, just the speed of them and the ground they cover and how quickly they cover it, and how much of a bond they must have with their handler, that their handler has trained them to be that far away and still listen and still be under control, because you are talking a whole field they run from one side to the other, not they're 20 or 30 foot each side of you. If people want to find out more from you, can they contact you? How does that work? But also, whilst I've got you here and you've so lovingly given your time to talk about this topic, please feel free to plug a little bit about your business, because your business is not all dogs, is it?
Not at all. Completely the opposite. I would love to do I have an events company and work a lot with corporates and privates, doing completely the opposite, parties and conferences and team offsites and experiences and retreats kind of thing. I have in the past tried to get people, I've also tried to kind of sell, I suppose, a bit of grouse shooting over the dogs and everything, but sadly people tend to always want the driven shooting, but I would love to do organize more kind of shoots and everything, or that kind of outdoor stuff for people, people are more than welcome to get in touch with me, because I could seriously talk about this all day, and I would love to encourage more and more people to, if they've got setters and pointers who and just don't know what to do with them and everything, I would love to just encourage more people to kind of get involved and work, whether they want to work them in any shape or form, because they are fabulous dogs. They're tricky when you don't know what's in front of you, and you're like, oh my god, this thing just is not listening, it's not doing what I'm wanting, it's not sitting and staying at 12 weeks old or whatever, it's jumping around like a loon. But I mean, my youngster, he's at 6 months old, I finally managed to get him to sit and stay and walk away 2 paces, and I was absolutely thrilled. Because it's like that. But no, people can contact me through Instagram, Messenger, if people want my mobile, I'm gladly give it, and people are more than welcome just to give me a call, and I'll happily have a chat.
And you really do know your stuff, because I'm right in saying you're a judge as well, aren't you?
Well, I'm a trainee judge. So I'm a makey learny. I've actually now judged 2 trials. I did a 2-day trial last summer in Yorkshire on the grouse, and then I did a day on the partridge. And I've got, coming up in March, I've got a 2-day trial on the grouse, and then I've got a 2-day trial in April on the partridge in Suffolk. So yeah, I've still, we have to take, I think now we have to take an exam to get on the judging panel, and so you have an A and a B panel. So yeah, the aim is to get onto the B, obviously. Otherwise, I remain a makey learning. But yeah,
I think the fact that you're already, even as a makey learning judging, says an amazing amount about your skill and your real life business. I look at your pictures on Instagram, and I think I want to be a PA. I just want to wander around behind her in all these lovely hotels and just take notes for you, because you go to some of the most amazing places.
For the people that obviously are completely novice to this, could you just explain the difference between the setters, the pointers and the HPRs, just so that everybody understands how they work and what the difference is between them? Because probably people will think, oh, well, as long as it points, they're all the same kettle of fish, basically. And that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, quite often, because I say pointers and setters, people automatically think, because I've mentioned pointers, there must be an HPR group. But yes, what we've got is, you've obviously got your Spaniels and Labs as a group. And then you've got HPRs, German pointers, Spinonis, Weimaraners, everything. And then there's the English pointer and the setters are just in a completely extra subgroup of their own. With our setters and pointers, they can retrieve. I know people who do retrieve with them, but we generally don't. Whereas obviously the HPR says what it is, hunt, point, retrieve dogs. Whereas the setters and pointers, I'd say I suppose you work them a lot wider even than the HPRs. Our lot also don't. They do enjoy swimming, but we don't have to do that. Their work is mainly just to go out and find that game for you, and it's just running long distance, wide quartering, just to get out and find that game. What we generally do is that, I suppose, on a shoot day, we will then bring in Spaniels and Labs to do the retrieving for us. Though, as I said, there are people friends of mine who have turned their setters into HPRs effectively, because they get them to retrieve as well.
And am I right in saying that the HPRs versus the pointers and setters, their point as such is a little bit different as well? So a HPR point would look slightly different to a setter's set? Yes.
So yeah, it's an HPR. I suppose they're very much upright. They've still got that leg lifted up. In English, pointer's point is very much like an HPR point in look, whereas the setters, particularly my bitch, she crouches low. So setters are very much more cat-like and feline in the way they are, and that is a different trait, obviously, to the pointers. And that's, I'm saying pointers as in collective, being English pointers and the HPRs. So she will really crouch down low and set. Other setters will actually stand as well. And it's interesting, I'm starting to see, not that I've put him on any game yet, he has had a back on a lark on my older one, but my youngster, who is actually a lot bigger, he's like the size of a Shetland pony, to be honest with you, I'm starting to see what his point's going to be like, and he won't crouch. I think he's going to stay upright. So it'll be interesting just to see what happens there.
But that's where the sort of the names come from lots of different things. But the setter in tradition, that was its job. It would set it up for the person to shoot, and then they would send their retrievers, hence retrievers. Each dog had a certain function. The idea we go on about a multi-use dog now being a dog that can shoot on a pick up on a Saturday and then go to Canicross on a Monday. Back in time, each dog had a very specific role, didn't it?
Exactly. And I think that's probably why setters, and I'm going to say English pointers here, to differentiate, are probably less popular because they're not an all-round dog. The HPRs do, and Spaniels and Labs do everything, can do everything pretty much you want. You can go out rough shooting with any of those dogs, and you get the dog flushes, whether it points or not, but it flushes, gets the bird up, you shoot it, you can use that same dog to retrieve. Whereas with the setters and English pointers, their function, yes, is very much set or point, flush the birds, and then you bring in a retriever, because as I said, they can retrieve, but it's not natural, and you can't rely on them necessarily to do that.
But for example, like spaniel and retriever, this might be my ignorance around this whole topic now. Obviously, I understand they're flush birds. I understand all that. But can they hold a bird, or can you train them to point or set and not flush until you get there?
Sorry, for spaniels and labs, or?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, actually. I have heard of people say they have had a spaniel or a lab that's actually pointed the birds. So that'd be actually really interesting to know if anyone's got them.
If you're listening to this and your dog will set or point and it is a Springer or a Retriever, we are now all curious. I think, you see them on like Instagram and on Facebook. You see young, pups in a litter, and they pull in like, a wing on a fishing rod, and they all instinctively point, and they make me giggle every time I watch it like a fool, because they remind me almost of like little baby dinosaurs. They're almost like that stealth stop, as a pack. And I think it's absolutely fascinating, and it's definitely genetically the capability. Whereas I think if you put that same feather in with a load of Spaniel pups, they would just annihilate it. There would be no control.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting, because I've got some chickens at home, and they can get into I have a kind of fenced off area for the dogs, and they can get in. And my young spaniel, she now doesn't chase, but she would, if she were given a chance, she would chase, and she'd probably end up earlier in the early days wanting to pin one of the birds down. My setter pup has never done that. All he does, I will just leave him in there and leave the chickens in there, because all he'll do is just point them, and then he just stealthily walks up to them once they're through the fence, and he then chases and has a bit of a run around. But when they're in there, the setters just won't touch them. It's just purely pointing, which is really interesting.
I actually have two that do it.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, they'll do it on pheasant and partridge. They do it when they're poults, and they then stop doing it when they get to adults. And I don't know whether it's because poults they know don't fly very well, and as soon as they start flying, they just stop pointing at them. But yeah, I've got two spaniels, and then also we've got two Clumber Cross spaniels. And because they air scent, they also will hold a static. It's not a point like a pointer does, but they will lift a leg up and go completely rigid if there's something in an area that needs flushing out until you tell them to flush. And I think if I'm right, any air scenting dog is able to point. But obviously it comes more instinctively to your setters and your pointers and your HPRs.
I was just going to ask, because obviously, Lucy, you come up near me up here in Yorkshire and Lancashire and up this part of the country. Is that because there aren't many people who do what you do? Is it quite a small sort of pool of people who've got that skill and ability?
Yeah, there are lots of people up your way who do it, who I know and everything. But I suppose I come up purely because that's where I can really work my dogs. I can obviously train them and everything on the partridge, and I could work them on the partridge, but obviously, the enjoyment is being up on the moors. But there are, I suppose there's more people around the Northumberland area, because there seems to be a lot of people. There was a mass exodus when they retired. They all went up to Northumberland, to Muggleswick. I know a load of people literally just did this mass move up to Muggleswick with their pointers and setters, and have set up there. But I suppose there's a lot of us who are interested and run them, and so we make this mass journey up north and spend most of our time driving up and down the A1 and M1.
I suppose you have to go where the moors are, though, don't you?
Yeah. There is one bit that I've realised I should have probably mentioned. I haven't actually explained how, because when we do the grouse count, we do it in a quadrant of 4, like 4 sides. So when we go out and count, we actually do it in a square. I mean, it's obviously easiest then, it's just four sides. But what this obviously affects the dogs as well, because the dogs then have to work different winds. So one side you'll obviously have, you'll be working into the wind, so that's nice and easy. Another side you'll be working downwind. And then the other 2 you'll have cheek winds. So again, that's very good. Well, very good for the dogs. With a young dog, it just has to pick it up and learn it, really. And you just have to obviously be watching your dogs and make sure they're on make sure they're on the right wind. But actually, to be fair, most dogs, the working ones, will very much pick that wind up straight away and immediately turn the way they're working. But yes, I just thought that's quite an important part of what we do. So we don't just, okay, we're at this point on the moor, we're just going to walk for eternity in one direction. Because what happens is they do quadrants on the moor, because then that particular count quadrant they'll generally take an average and everything, and it can just give an idea of the birds in that area. And it's that same quadrant that is counted every time. So every time in March, every time in July, and every year it's the same counts done.
So on that, like the similarity from a pheasant point of view would be like dogging in. So we kind of know where our birds are so that we can shoot them. But from dogging in, we want the birds to go in a certain direction. Does that matter when they're pushed by the dogs on the counts? Does it matter where they go because they'll come back because they're territorial?
You've hit the nail on the head there, yeah. But it doesn't matter where they go because they're territorial. They'll automatically come back to their areas.
So we'd just like to take a moment to thank Lucy massively for taking the time to do this podcast with us. It's a little bit longer than normal, but that's because I think it's such an exciting and informative topic, and I'm really glad we got the information from Lucy. And now we are all more informed about what happens in grouse shooting and grouse counting, and with the English setters, etc. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Lucy, very much, and we hope you listen in next week. Thank you for listening to LWDG Pod Dog with me, Jo Perrott. Now, we all know training a dog takes time, energy and patience, but our lives can be really, really busy. Don't worry, the LWDG has got you covered. Join us for our free planning workshop where we'll show you how to use short 10-minute training sessions each day to fast forward your dog's education. Our experts have years of experience in training dogs and will help you get started on the right foot. Register now and start making progress with your furry friend today. Go to our Facebook page, the Ladies Working Dog Group, and click on the pinned post, or visit www.thelwdg.com.